Welcome to episode 91 of the Stay Clad Experience. This is Darcy Tobin, your host. I mean, come on, I'm not that important. This is episode 91 of the Stay Clad Experience. And this is the first time I've ever really got up in the mic. And as you can tell, actually you wouldn't be able to tell, but I have been going back and forth about how I start this thing for like the past 10 minutes. So I'm just going to get straight into it. What a year it's been. It's hard to sort of quantify the person that I was at the start of 2024 to compared to the person that I am now. And for anyone that doesn't know, it is 9:27 p.m. on the 31st of December 2025. And honestly, I've had a lot of hesitation today about doing this conversation. And I say that because it is well and truly out of my comfort zone. For those that don't know, and I don't think too many people would actually know this apart from some of my close friends, but the reason why I actually started the podcast was due to a person in my life who I probably would consider a mentor at the time and has since become more of a friend, who questioned my ability to communicate. And I think it's been something that's sort of built inside of me from a very young age with other things and not just this, but he basically questioned my ability to communicate, and that built within me a desire to sort of prove him wrong. And unfortunately, throughout my whole childhood, that has been something that I've had to contend with. I don't want to go too far into it, but probably wasn't the smartest kid at school. That made it sort of hard to fit in with other people. I got put in all these behavioral academic review and all this sort of stuff. And I've just felt like for my whole life, I've sort of had to fight to prove that I'm worthy of being listened to, fight that I'm worthy of actually saying what I'm going to do. And I think that has built within me a underlying desire to sort of prove people wrong. And I don't think it's a bad thing, but it probably has made me a bit of a, I wouldn't say outcast is the right word, but it's made me very comfortable in my own skin, and it's made me, I'm not even sure what I'm trying to say, but it's basically made me try to prove myself my whole life. And so as I'm sitting here this afternoon, I'm battling with all those demons, let's just say. And I'm like, well, no one even wants to listen to what I have to say. And that's probably why I started the podcast, to sort of delve into other people's stories, but never really felt too comfortable diving into my own. So I know that this is hard for me, but I know it is also incredibly important given the path that I'm on, because I'll probably kick myself if I don't do some form of recording when I've got all the equipment here and I'm only 6 months into my journey. So I know I'm going to look back on this one day and smile and cringe probably at the same time, but nonetheless, it is something that I really wanted to do. Last week, I put out a question box to my audience and got a heap of really good questions. A lot of them were, a bit of a joke, but at the same time, there were some really good ones that caught my attention, and I've obviously ordered them correctly, I guess, in level of seriousness. So I'm not sure I'm going to answer too many of the dumb ones, but I probably do want to take a deep dive into some of the serious questions that I've got here, because I'm a deep person and I love taking it deep with other people. So I'm like, why not open the fucking door and let's just go and talk about everything. And I don't know what I'm going to say today. I have obviously scripted some of these, not scripted, but I've written down some of these questions. But aside from that, I don't really have a script or a message that I want to get out of this. I just want to get here and talk and get comfortable with doing this sort of thing, because I do think it's critical on the path that I'm on to hold a conversation and engage an audience. And if you've come this far, just trust me, not trust me, but just, I don't know, leave it with me or whatever you want to do. Just take it easy on me, because I am learning and I'm putting myself out here by doing this. And I don't even know if anyone's going to listen to this. So I'm not really too fussed, to be honest. I don't have a massive audience on the podcast, but I'm really hoping that one day I do. And then they look back on this and they're like, God, that guy came a long way. Question 1 came from my friend Marcel, _training. And it's an interesting one. I'm going to give myself maybe a timer of 10 minutes because it's a long-winded story about how I ended up in this seat. But here we go. It said, how did you get your first ideas of starting as the stake lad? And I think in order to understand that question, you probably sort of have to understand the person that I was before I even started the stake lad. And sort of going into my childhood and early teenage years a bit, I always, whenever I found something, I always wanted to excel. I wanted to be the best. I wanted to prove people wrong. I wouldn't say I was naturally gifted at too many things, but I worked. And I continued to do that in this line of work, let's just say with social media. I wouldn't say I'm the most talented presenter. I'm not the most talented editor, but I am consistent and I'm incredibly disciplined. And when I was probably 19, I took a strong interest in boxing. And at the time, I was really, really, really interested in weightlifting. I was a big kid. When I say big kid, I was like maybe 15 to 20 kilos heavier than I am now. And it's funny, Marcel, you're right into your training, so you might laugh at this one. But right into my training, and I used to work as a pool lifeguard. And I was in the pool one day and I saw he looked more like a statue than a human, but I went up to him and I was like, wow, man, you look very impressive. Tell me what you do. And he said he did boxing. And I had always been interested in self-defense, but I was always like all in on one thing and not trying to do too many other things. So yeah, when I was that age, I was at uni. I think it was my first year of studying to be a paramedic, which is another story. And I went basically up to that guy, introduced myself, got his card and went to his gym and had a one-on-one personal training session. Never really thought I'd take it all that seriously, but the competitive person inside of me, which is an absolute beast when I need to be, I basically was training one day after a PT and he goes, do you want to start sparring? And I'll never forget it because it was a 40-year-old guy and he beat the living crap out of me. And I remember driving home that day and I'm like, I am never doing this again. But I showed up the next day and I was like, I'm not going to do sparring again. I don't enjoy this. And I basically, after the second session, the same thing happened. He said, do you want to get in? And I'm sitting there in the corner. I'm like, no, not really. But I did it again. Again and again and again and again. And within 3 months, that guy probably would have preferred not to have sparred me because I overtook him pretty quickly. And that was a pretty cool thing because I thought I was the man. And I quickly realized I wasn't when after 3 months, my coach was like, I think you need to go to another gym. So I went to another gym. Basically, long story short, I fell in love with sparring and boxing and basically decided that I was going to I wanted to become like the best amateur boxer that I could at the time. And I decided against the will of my lovely mother, who might be listening to this, sorry, Mum, you did say this. She said, you can leave the house if you don't finish paramedics degree. And I didn't really want to finish my paramedics degree. And it'd be funny, like imagine if I actually finished that degree, where my life would have gone. But so many things have happened as a result of that. But I ended up pursuing amateur boxing, took a whole year off and did maybe 6 fights. And through all of that, lost heaps of weight, developed a bit of an eating disorder and got into real estate as well during that year. When I finished up that year, I was like, I want to be a full-time real estate agent. So I dropped out of the paramedics degree and enrolled in a property degree. In my second year, I went on an exchange trip. Once again, that all in nature, it's a blessing and a curse. I went to that trip. On the first day, I was just the absolute crazy man, the party man, the guy that said yes to everything. And I've talked about mum before, and I hope she's not listening. I know she'll be listening actually. So I won't go too much into what I did on that trip, but I definitely don't want to say it if mum's listening, that's for sure. And throughout that trip, I put on easily 20 kilos, and I came back, and the habits that I developed during my boxing days came back, and they came back really badly. I lost like 15 to 20 kilos. I lost it all again in 3 months. And I was eating like 1,250 calories. And I remember one day I was displaying some things that a normal 24-year-old or 23-year-old shouldn't display. Low sex drive, all this sort of thing. And went into the doctor, and he was like, how much are you eating? And I had my MyFitnessPal on my phone, and it was like 1,250 calories that day. And he was like, dude, you need to eat more. And that inspired me to sort of start taking nutrition a bit more seriously. But at the same time, I was displaying the erratic eating. I wasn't eating. I was starving myself for a whole week, and then I would eat like 5 or 6 donuts at the end of the week. And I was in Bistro Morgan in High Street near Paran off Chapel Street. And I had eaten maybe 5 donuts, and I had starved myself for the whole week. And I was like, there has to be another way. And that was sort of where it started. I think it was the 27th of October, 2020, which was a few years after I started boxing, and my second year of uni, which was actually mid-COVID, come to think of it. And I decided from that point that it was going to be different. And Mum will remember this well. I would get really into meal prep. I think it first started with chicken. Then I got into keto. Then I got into exploring carnivore. And I think from there I became super obsessed with, once I found carnivore, super obsessed with the carnivore diet. And obviously we had a bit of time off during that year, 2020 being COVID. And during that 2 years Melbourne were in lockdown, I just went all in on learning as much as I could about steak. And 2023 is when I started the Steak Lad. I spent 8 months, actually real estate was my 100% focus during 2023, and by far my best earning year from a real estate perspective. I sort of look back on my 2024 performance compared to my 2023, and whilst I was balancing a lot more in 2024, I was like, God, I don't know if I've made the right call here, because during 2024 I was obviously showing probably more interest in the Steak Lad and my journey, which has sort of led me to where I am now. But long story short, that's where it all started. And the obsession, the interest came at the start of this year is like when I knew I wanted to take this more seriously. It was probably just sort of building up to that point and building up enough self-belief that I knew it would work out. And interesting, I actually saw a quote this morning, and it was about essentially destiny. Life is about taking risks that feel like destiny for you. And it got to the point at the start of this year where I was like, well, this is my destiny and it's going to work out whether I like it or not. And whilst I'm nowhere near I want to be, it is definitely a lot further progressed than where I was at the start of this year. And for that, I'm grateful. So a similar question I had for that was like, do you remember the first time you knew you loved steak? I think it was sort of around that time. I think, 2020 is when I started to really enjoy the passion, I guess, around steak. And it's just in my personality to sort of take it to the extreme. And, I looked at the other day at my first video that I ever did compared to now, and it's just so far ahead. And I truly, truly, truly believe that if you have a desire, if you have a passion for something, I've become so passionate about this. I don't even know how I've got to this point, but I've become so passionate about just following a dream and backing yourself in, because the amount that I've learned just by doing the thing. I have so many people that approach me and come up to me and they're like, how do you do this? How do you do that? I'm like, I never had those people. I just sort of figured it out myself. Sorry, that was a bit of a side rant. State of Nirvana, my man. Where do you get your inspiration from? Where do I start? I've struggled feeling like I'm enough. And when I talked about before about that desire and willingness to prove others wrong, it's been a good thing, but it has led to some incredible isolation as I figure my life out, if that makes sense. I have been on a big personal development journey, I guess, throughout this whole 2 years. Like, I was the person that would go out, party, do all these stupid things that I think it's sort of a natural thing that people go through, but I would say yes to all those things and go out and party, and I never enjoyed it. And I think since I've made the desire, and I think this sort of all stemmed from actually stopping drinking probably a few years ago, but since that point, I've got a long way to go in working whatever I have in my brain out around this, but I've been working and doing all these crazy things for no one else but myself. And I'm not sure if that's a good thing. To be honest, I think it's a good thing, because I'm sort of figuring myself out, but I don't know how I'm sort of doing it. I don't know. This is like a bit of a rant. This is what I said before. You're going to have to just leave it with me as I figure this thing out. But I think my inspiration has come from years of feeling like I wasn't good enough. And that's a hard thing to say, because there's probably a lot of people out there that look at what I do and they're like, this guy's got it all figured out. This guy's really good at what he does. You know, I'm doing this thing right now because I don't feel like I'm good enough. I even said this at the start of the conversation. I don't feel like I'm worthy of your time. If you've made it this far, how long has it been? 18 minutes. I don't feel like I'm worthy of your time. And it's a hard place to be, because I'm not sure if I'm ever going to really come over it, or I don't know how I'm going to overcome it, because it's been something that's always been there. And it's not something that affects me. It's not something that makes me feel any different to how I otherwise would feel, but it's sort of hard, because I haven't figured out how I sort of switch off. This is another tangent, but because I have such a feeling within me that I have to prove this in order to achieve this. And like I said before, I don't know how I'm going to come over this or deal with this, because it's something that I'm continually working on and trying to deal with and overcome. But I just can't. It just built within me that I'm not good enough. People are going to doubt me. People are going to question me. And it's great. On this journey into what I've built and what I've done, I have found a lot of people that seem to believe in me and are supportive of what I do. But when you put yourself out there as much as I do, there's always going to be the people that sort of question you, or you bring up questions in yourself about what you're doing and the path that you're on and all that sort of stuff. And it is hard. It's hard. So yeah, that was a long-winded answer to where I got my inspiration from, but I think the majority of my inspiration comes from the desire to prove others wrong. And it's funny, because like this whole journey is about no one else but myself. Someone said the other day, would I invest in Steak Lad as a business? Probably not, because if you stop, the whole thing stops. And I think that's something I have to deal with. I heard someone talk about it the other day. It was like, if your business stops with you, then you've got a problem. And I know that they probably weren't talking about a creator. They were probably more talking about a business, like a business with employees and all that sort of stuff. But at the same time, it's got me thinking about all this other stuff that I probably shouldn't be thinking about in this point of my journey. But it's just the mind. It's just where my mind goes sometimes. So I can't complain. Antoine NG, you've been a guest on this podcast. He asked me, what are my biggest goals for 2026 and what stopped you from achieving that in 2025? Honestly, a few months ago, I set a goal to hit a subscriber count of 50,000 by the end of the year and on YouTube. And that's been my biggest goal. And I think what I want to do with YouTube probably hasn't been done in Australia before. And that is by far my biggest goal of this year. And when I say biggest goal, I mean, I want like 100,000 subscribers. I want to be able to do whatever I want. I have had too many people give me advice over this journey about what I should be doing. And one of those things is I should be spending more time on my beef tallow. I should be doing this. I should be doing like an online course teaching people how to cook steak. And my pushback to all of that is I'm not passionate about any of that stuff. I like selling beef tallow. I have a beef tallow product. I get a dopamine hit whenever the Shopify thing goes off. That's just who I am. But at the same time, it doesn't fill me with as much joy as YouTube. And I don't know what it is. I think I've always had an interest in long form content, and I have always seen myself as a long form creator. So I think if you were to sit down and analyze my goals for 2026, most of them center around giving YouTube my absolute all. And it's been a really interesting journey on YouTube so far this year. I looked at my subscriber count and I've gained over 10,000 subscribers since I think June this year, which is when I quit. So, the first 3 months were way quicker than the past month. So much so that I haven't really been checking YouTube as much. I think there was a point where I was growing really quickly that I was sort of checking YouTube every second. I had to delete it from my phone because I was so interested in the analytics and just refreshing. And I remember I'd be getting so many subscribers and it would be amazing. But I don't do that as much anymore. And it's funny, so much so that, I don't even know. This is going to sound crazy, but I hit 16,000 subscribers yesterday and I basically refreshed it when it hit 16,000 and I didn't really feel anything. And this sort of comes back to what I was speaking about at the start. It's I didn't really feel like it was worth celebrating. And it's hard because there are millions of people out there. I think if you hit 10,000 subscribers, you're in I'm just going to have some water. You're in a small percentage of people that have actually made it to a particular level. So for me to get there last night and sit there as it hit 16,000 subscribers, it's a bit of a reality check because I know that at this point in my journey, there isn't a massive amount of things that are going on that I'll be grateful for looking back, but it doesn't feel like it's worth celebrating in the moment. It's crazy. I am so uniquely aware that video of me hitting 16,000 subscribers is something that I'm going to look back on with pride. But at the same time, it was so hard for me to actually film because I didn't really feel like it was anything worth celebrating. And it's funny because I look at some of the growth that I've had and I suspect there might be a few other creators out there that feel this. It's I might feel this particular way when I hit this level. Oh, I'm going to feel this particular way when I hit imagine how good it's going to feel when I hit 50,000 Instagram subscribers, which is probably not that far away at how my following's going. And I've got it in my head. I've always had it. It's when I hit 30K, I'm going to feel this particular way. And you know what? I've talked to a few other creators. I never felt so good when I hit 1,000. Anything since there hasn't been as good. I remember when I hit 1,000, I had some friends over at the time and I just had my first viral post and I just couldn't believe it. I was like, how is this possible? I think that is probably the biggest, aside from getting monetized on YouTube, probably the most or the best I've felt throughout this whole journey about followers and all this sort of stuff. So yeah, that was a long-winded answer. But yeah, I'm hoping that I can enjoy the process a bit more this year because it's something that I've noticed throughout this whole past 6 months is like, I haven't really taken into consideration what I've done. And it's probably going to be things like what I'm doing right now that make me grateful for what I have done. Like what I say right now, I'm like, this thing right now, when it's out there in the world and I can look back on it one day. In saying that, I'm putting myself, like everything I do right now with YouTube and stuff is sort of documenting the journey and how far I've come and all this sort of stuff. But I cringe at some of the stuff that I put out now, knowing how much better it could be. Like I said, it's a blessing and a curse wanting or having the mindset that I had. But yeah, and my goals this year for YouTube, all focus on YouTube. I want to be the biggest or one of the biggest YouTube creators in Australia. And I want to redefine what it means to be a creator in Australia and be that first person that when people talk about, you know, YouTube in Australia and content in Australia, I want to be like a driving force to like the international market and what's possible. What stopped me from achieving that? It's probably not enough time. And it's an easy thing for me to say, but I balance the beef tallow, I balance the podcast, I balance the editing for my YouTube, I balance the ideation, I balance the finalization of my reels, voiceovers. I work 7 days a week. I heard Stephen Bartlett talk about this morning. I like listening to people early on in their journey, and I don't know why, but I had the urge to speak to Stephen Bartlett's early podcast this morning. And the reason for that is because I look at him now and I'm like, wow, like he's so good at talking. He can't have always been that good. And going back to episode 1 made me realize that he wasn't too dissimilar to myself. He was filming it in his kitchen and he had a dream and he had a vision. And it's ironic that in that episode that I listened to today, he talked about or encouraged people, if you have a story, get out and just do it. So it was a timely thing for me to do, or it was timely that I listened to that this morning, but I don't even know where I was going with that. What stopped me from doing that? But yeah, he basically talked about some of the challenges that he had at the start of his journey as well, balancing a lot of things. And yeah, I balance too many things is probably what has stopped me from achieving some of my goals this year. So yeah, there's a few things that I'm trying to focus on at the moment. One of them is getting a point to where I have an editor. I think if I had an editor, I would free up another 2 days in my week at an absolute minimum. The edits take me so long. And then I have some goals around expanding my beef tallow product because I'm definitely leaving money on the table. But yeah, that's just going to come with time, I think. Bradley Drybra. Also, and it's funny, all the podcasters and all the guests that I've had on, you attract some of the same like-minded people throughout their journey, and some of the best people or the best questions that I've had asked over the past, when I put the question box up, were people that I've either had on the podcast or want to or do a podcast themselves. Bradley Drybra, are you comfortable with the uncertainty of the path ahead? It's an interesting one. Honestly, I haven't been too uncomfortable about this whole process. I think when you back yourself into a corner and you don't give any other option but for it to work out, you do some things that you otherwise wouldn't have done. And whilst that is a good thing, I mean, I backed myself into a bit of a hole a few weeks ago. Probably more than a few weeks, probably a few months ago. And my good friend Ollie Gale, who is my housemate, called me out on it because I was stressed as hell. I think I was operating on a lot of fear of things not working out a few months ago. And whilst it pushed me to do things that I probably wouldn't be able to do now, that's not true. I could do it, but I probably don't want to because I know what that is like. It was hard. I've never been in such a position before where I'm not sure I really knew what was going on. Like I was so confused. I was delusional. And that is a result of the uncertainty, I guess. So it's funny. The uncertainty pushed me to do all of that. And it made me realize probably where my limit was. Like at that point, I was doing a podcast a week. I was doing 2 reels a week. I was doing a long form. It was a lot and it pushed me to my limits, but it got me to a point where things were in motion. And as a result of that motion, I developed an underlying self-belief in myself that I can push through anything. And there are a lot of other people that have probably gone through much worse than I did at the time. But I pride myself on my ability to push through uncomfortableness and pain and uncertainty. And after pushing through that, I sort of probably overcame that fear of things not working out, which as a result made me very comfortable with the path ahead. And whilst it is uncertain, there have been so many things that have happened this year that have just given me or instilled in me so much confidence that this is going to work out. And for anyone listening, thank you. You've made it 33 minutes, which is a lot. But for anyone listening, like, I don't have a backup plan. This is my life. I've dedicated and sacrificed so many things to this. It is unbelievable. I haven't been on a date for 2 years, probably even more. And I want to find someone. But unfortunately, in this day and age, if you don't go out and if you're not on the online apps, it is quite challenging to meet a partner or even just someone that you hang out with, Netflix and chill. Like that sort of stuff. At the moment, unfortunately, that stuff just doesn't interest me in the slightest. I've gone through all that phase, and this just goes into what I said about where I get my inspiration from. I've got to the point where if I don't want to do it, I just don't do it. And I'm very, very, very focused right now on the path ahead, let's just say. And whilst that path is fairly uncertain, I've done enough work and I've proven myself right, let's just say, too many times throughout this year for it not to work out. So Bradley, my friend, my good friend, I'm very comfortable with how the uncomfortableness of the path ahead, I am very comfortable with it. I've learned to be comfortable with it because of what I've pushed through this year and what I've overcome. Even before, quitting my job, I was in a horrific spot. I'm going to be open here. I was a part of a high-performing team in real estate, and I was probably made to feel bad about my interests, my side interest being the stay clad at work, to the point where I was the least aligned version of myself that I ever was a few months ago, a few months before I quit. And I say I was misaligned because I began doubting everything that I said in the office. This probably started at the start of the year when the CEO of the business overheard me talking about the steak lad, and that was communicated back to my boss. And from that point, I just felt as though I was being watched. And I don't even know how I got to this point, but I felt like I was being watched. And I know what I'm talking about now. I felt like I was being watched. I felt like I was being judged. I remember we went around and everyone asked, one of my team members asked, how was everyone's weekend? And it got to me and he was like, I don't need to know what you did on the weekend, Darcy. And it hit me in the heart because like I'm so passionate about what I do. And I felt like my passion for what I did on the side was being not killed, but it was being diminished and viewed as a bit of a joke by people around me at the start of this year, which made it incredibly hard knowing that I wanted to give it my all and pursue this to overcome. Like the past month before I quit, the last month, I was in a soundproof room the whole day, but I was still nervous that I was being watched. And I've never felt so much relief quitting. And I remember there was a friend who was like, even before I quit, there was that uncertainty. It was like, man, you don't have a backup. You don't have much money saved, because I spent all my money last year on getting to the point where I was at to quit. Essentially, that involved buying all this. Obviously, I get looked after a bit more now, but I bought all the steak. I bought my ice bath, my sauna, all the equipment here out of my personal savings. I launched my beef tallow product with no help. And I didn't really have the best year in real estate in 2024. So basically got to the point where I had really not many savings at all. And my friend just reinforced that just before I quit as well. He was like, man, you don't have too much to fall back on. And that goes back to what I said before. Life is about taking risks around decisions that you think are destiny. And I was like, this is my destiny. This is what I was born to do. So that goes back to what I said before. I'm incredibly comfortable because this is my only backup plan. I have no backup plan. And everything in my life that has happened, whether I like it or not, has led me to this point. The boxing, the paramedic, whatever, all this sort of stuff led me to what I'm doing now. So if you'd ask me where I get my inspiration from, that's probably going back a bit, but I got my inspiration from everything that has happened in my life from a young age to where I am at now, which has made it very easy to deal with the challenges that I've dealt with this year. And a follow-up to that question Bradley made was, if the uncertainty, I texted him straight after he gave me the question on Instagram, if the uncertainty does or at some point has troubled you, what within you has it challenged? I think I sort of answered that before in the sense that it didn't really, it did challenge me. It challenged me because I didn't know where my limit was. And the limit was, I reached my limit essentially by getting to the point where I was so uncomfortable that I had to learn to become comfortable. I sort of had to rewire my brain to deal with the challenges that I had been dealing with. That was like lack of sleep, not knowing when to slow down. I was shooting like 5 days a week. I was stressed, erratic. I would leave things around the house. It was just hard. It was just hard. And I think if I want to talk about the uncertainty, it was the uncertainty that pushed me to that point. And since that point, it has been about finding the balance. And I would say that I'm at the point now where my workload is well and truly above a normal 9 to 5, but I am probably doing the bare minimum. Actually, that's not true. There probably hasn't been a night where I've gone to bed before 11 since quitting, which was, coming up on 6 months ago. But I'm probably at the point now where I'm doing the bare minimum to relentlessly move forward, but at the same time look after my mental health, if that makes sense. Next question. This is fun. I'm actually enjoying this. If you've made it this far, just let me know. Give me a text or something. Or if you made it this far, you probably have my number. Let's just say that, because I'm not sure if anyone else will. And it's funny, I had two similar questions from two good friends of mine, Vicky, who's been a massive supporter of mine throughout the journey, who are both sort of part of the carnivore community, and Bradley Marshall. And essentially those questions stemmed around, what does life look like if the internet doesn't exist? Had another similar question from Alistair, who ordered some beef tallow from me, complained about the shipping, so I bloody refunded him the shipping and dropped it off personally. Alistair, if you're watching this, thank you for that. You got to pay me next time for the shipping. No, I'm joking. He asked me, in an online world of constant growth, how do you actually quantify success? And a similar question from Vicky was, if all social media platforms disappear tomorrow, what pivot would you make to continue to ensure that you continue the Stay Clad message? I mean, there's sort of, it's a myriad of topics there, but what does life look like for you if the internet doesn't exist? Honestly, this is me being honest, I think I would struggle. I wouldn't say my self-worth is centered around the performance of my respective social media platforms, but I have definitely found myself probably assessing too much over the growth, how much money I'm making through social media. I'm an open book. If you want to know how much money I haven't made I've probably made like $7,000 from YouTube. But this month was great on Facebook. I made like $2,500 from Facebook, which was cool. And that's a massive, if any creators out there and you're not on Facebook, get on Facebook. But I genuinely think the internet has given me a chance to heal something within me. And that healing process is still an ongoing thing that I'm dealing with. And I might not know, I'm not even sure what it is healing, but like I am so far past the point where like I'm motivated to put out content. I'm not motivated to put out content. I actually want to put out content. Like I guess that is sort of motivation, but I think after you've done it for 6 months, you are so far past motivation and you are well and truly into the trenches of discipline, especially when you've done what I've done. I've done 23 long form YouTubes, which someone commented the other day, you've got to do more long forms. And I was like, dude, if you knew how hard it was to do what I've done, you would not say that, because there was a point a few months ago, my housemate would attest to this, where I even wanted to do 2 long forms a week. And I'm so glad I didn't do that, because I probably would have burnt out. But all of this has given me a chance to do something that my little self would be proud of. The little kid that struggled with his self-worth and still sort of continues to struggle with his self-worth today, but the little kid that always had people questioning him and, you know, it's hard. Like I went through a lot at school because of my differences. I don't think I've ever said this or talked about this, but I probably got like bullied as a kid. Yeah. I haven't said that in a long time, but yeah, I probably got made to feel a particular way growing up by other kids at school. And yeah, I remember like one day at a, like we were hanging out with all these guys at school, and like they all ran away, and like I was sort of chasing them, and I remember I caught up to them, and it was just like the shit that was being said. It was just, wow. there were a handful of other stuff like that just, I remember I was having a conversation with a girl one day, and someone found out about it, and they grabbed my phone from me and was like holding me down, and they were like reading the conversation, and everyone was laughing and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, the stuff like that has made it harder to believe in myself and trust myself. And I think if all social media platforms disappeared tomorrow, I feel like there would be a part of myself that wouldn't heal, because I wouldn't have a chance to put myself out there like I have. And I'll probably never put myself out there as much as I have in what I just said, but it'd be hard, for sure. And I don't know what I would do. What pivot would you take to ensure you continue the Stay Clad message? I mean, I think the world would be a pretty dark and miserable place if there was no internet, to be honest. So what I would do, I'm genuinely not sure. I would need to deal with whatever's going on in the world if there was no social media platforms, probably over and above having to think about how I continue the Stay Clad message, Vicky. But how would I continue it? I would probably do what I'm doing now. Documenting the journey. That doesn't really make sense because there's no one to document it to, but it's a really hard question, honestly, because first of all, it's hard to think about a question that you don't think is going to happen. Like, I don't think there's going to be a world in which there's no social media. Perhaps there might be. I'm not sure. But I think I would struggle a lot because I don't feel like I'm anywhere near where I could be. And whilst I know I've grown, I don't feel like I'm anywhere near where I am destined to be. And where I'm destined to be is, I'm almost like picturing him in my brain as someone I don't really recognize. Like someone that is proud of who he is, someone who is confident, someone who gets up in front of a stage and commands an audience. Because I don't think I'd be able to do those things right now. There's so many things that I don't think I could do right now that I know that the future version of myself will be able to do because of the work that he has put in to get to that point. And like I said before, I talked about it before, I'm so far past the point of motivation. I'm at the point where I'm just so incredibly disciplined and inspired, and I will genuinely do whatever it takes to get to this point. You know, I'm 30 and I genuinely feel like it's do or die for me this year. And I say that because 4 of my closest mates are all engaged and married. And what I said before, it has been over 2 years since I've been on a date. Like, there is that part of me in the back of my mind that thinks, what am I doing? Every good man in the world has a woman by his side, or a man, whatever. But let's just say every good man has a woman by his side. And there's every part of me that thinks, am I making a mistake? What if this doesn't, like I heard Stephen Bartlett talk about it today. You've got to put in a minimum of 5 to 10 years before you actually benefit from the pursuit that you're on. And yeah, there's a part of me that thinks, well, what happens if it takes that long? And I know this sort of stemmed from the internet not existing anymore. So I'm hoping it exists in 10 years. Else I don't know what I'm going to be doing, but there's a part of me that thinks, oh, what if it takes that long and I've just sacrificed my whole 30s for something that hasn't got as big as I want it to. Like, and perhaps if there's anyone listening at this point, how long are we now? 51 minutes, jeez. If there's anyone listening to this point who is good at goal setting and all that sort of stuff, like I sit here at 10:17 p.m. on the 31st of December and I haven't done a vision board. I haven't written out any goals. It's hard. Like getting or understanding or appreciating the journey that you're on. And that was a long-winded answer, but yeah. Egan Brooks, another podcast jet. Absolutely loving what he's putting out at the moment. What is your purpose? I think my purpose, I know I'm making money with what I'm doing right now, but I don't track it. Like, I don't even know what that stemmed from. But basically what I'm saying is that I am not doing this for money. I won't lie. I have always wanted a lot of money. I don't care if you judge me for that, but I have always wanted a lot of money. And I think I've always wanted a lot of money, not for what it will bring me. I drive a Mazda 3. It is a horrific car, but if that car lasts me for another 15 years, I'll probably be happy. Hoping I'm not driving it in 15 years, to be honest, but I don't care. Like, I don't need a nice car to feel worthy. I think my purpose is to be able to inspire others to not only chase their dreams, but have a passion that makes them want to get out of bed every day. And I think I've been able to do that at a small level, but there's a part of me that always questions, like, what if I did this? What if I did that? So I think my purpose is so much deeper than money and nice things and all that sort of stuff. I think my purpose is, and I say I think because I haven't really thought about it too much. I looked at this question before and I looked at a lot of the other questions and I was like, maybe I could write some dot points. But I just wanted to sit here and just trust myself that I could maybe think of something smart to say, even if it's not smart. I think my purpose is focused around inspiring others through food, through content. You know what? I actually asked ChatGPT, and I had my laptop here before with some of the dot points on there. I'm like, I'm not going to get my laptop out. It gets in the way of the view. And yeah, I just don't think I need too many dot points. But I actually asked ChatGPT what my purpose was. And people are going to roll their eyes and do this all. But I was like, it'd be interesting to see what it says. What you're really drawn to is mastery, doing something properly, not cutting corners. That's true. Truth, testing, questioning, calling things as they are. Creation, building something from nothing and standing behind it. Connection, sharing the process, not just the outcome. That's why your content goes deeper than food. You're documenting becoming someone. Is that not just what I just said? Like, oh God, I don't want to read it out. People are going to be like, you're just cheating. Your purpose sits at the intersection of three things. Most people's purpose lives where these overlap. Most people's purpose lives where these overlap. What you're willing to suffer for. Early mornings, late nights, doubt, risk. You can't complain, you lean in. That's not accidental. I said it before, late nights. What you can't stop thinking about. Quality growth, doing it right. Meaning behind the work. What helps others see you differently. Whether it's stake, business, health, or self-belief, your work gives people clarity and confidence. So if I had to put it into words, your purpose is to build something real in public with integrity and give others permission to do the same. Okay, laptop away. That sort of summed it up perfectly, honestly. I did say that. My purpose was to inspire others to basically do whatever they set out their mind to do. Like, I said this to a creator the other day, like, dude, you are going to be a massive creator. And he's like, dude, I've got a long way to go. He put out a post it got 4 million likes in like 48 hours. And I messaged him straight after. I was like, dude, what did I tell you? I've become so incredibly passionate about people following and chasing their dreams. I genuinely believe if you have a mind, if you have a goal, and if you're willing to sacrifice for a bit, you can do whatever you want. I quit my job with like less than $10,000 to my name. Against my mum's wishes, I had to sell some of my shares recently because I ran out of that money because my accountant told me that I lost $40,000 last year. Like, I don't even know why I said that. Basically implying that I've become passionate I know what I'm saying now. I've become passionate about people chasing their dreams and pursuing what they want in life. The version of me that started this year compared to the version of me that sits here in this chair right now is a completely different person. Imagine if I hadn't quit my job though. Imagine if I was still unhappy. Imagine if I think I would have quit. Even if I didn't do this, I think I would have quit my job. Like, I was so unhappy, but the amount of growth, personal growth, the amount of people that I've met, my eyes have just been opened up to a different world. Like, I have had creators that I've looked up to. There's only one person that I followed. My first 10 people, there's only one person out of the first 10 big creators that I followed that don't follow me. There are some creators in that top 10 that have multi-millions of subscribers and followers and all that sort of stuff. And they've followed me on Instagram and some of them on YouTube. Just crazy. And if I hadn't done and put myself out there, and it's funny, all of that has come since quitting my job. Max the Meat Guy, my biggest inspiration, followed me after 48 hours after quitting. And I remember sitting there and I was like, I've made the right call. But if I hadn't done, or if I hadn't quit my job, there'd be so many things that haven't happened that have happened. That's just like the most ridiculous, long-winded answer to what I was trying to say. But I'm just so glad that I backed myself in a few months ago. Because whilst the person that started this year he wouldn't believe the person that's sitting in this chair right now. And that's sort of going against sort of what I had to say before about being or understanding or appreciating the journey, but I know that for a fact. Maybe that's something that I can acknowledge for once. Who inspires you? Chasey's mum. People like Max, the Meat Guy. I don't even know if anyone knows him. To be honest, like anyone that has gone out with a dream and pursued something that they didn't think was possible inspires me. And I genuinely think that is what life is about. There have been too many things that have happened recently that have emphasized to me how short life is. I wouldn't say I'm scared of death, but the me that would be in heaven if I died tomorrow would not be happy. Because there's so much more that I want to do. And there's so much more that I know I will do. And when I look at how far I've come and what I've done in the past 2 years, it's funny, I had a guy follow me today that started like now. And like 2 years ago is when I sort of started taking this a bit more seriously. And I looked at him and I was like, keep going, man. Like you're just starting, like keep pushing. And I was like, wow, like it sort of got me thinking about my journey as well. And what I've done up till now, I'm actually glad. Like I haven't had rapid, uncontrollable growth. I think the stint that the run that I'm on now on my social media platforms, I've had over 10 million views this month on Instagram, 10 million on Facebook. YouTube's been pretty slow, but there's been some really strong growth. And I don't feel any different. I don't feel like I'm better than anyone listening because I've had 10 million views. In fact, I feel quite the opposite. But all of this journey and all just where I'm going, what I said before about being proud, like if I died tomorrow, there's just so much more that I want to do. And there's so many people out there that have done what I've done and have backed themselves into a corner. And yeah, this is what I was saying before about the slow growth. Like, I'm sort of glad it has taken, like, there are people that do a short and they grow like 30,000 followers overnight. I'm sort of glad that hasn't happened to me this year. I mean, it would have been nice. Not nice for my dopamine because I probably wouldn't be able to get off Instagram. But it allowed me to prepare myself for what's coming because I know that there is an abundance of growth coming my way in the form of followers, in the form of brand deals, in the form of money on YouTube and Facebook and all that sort of stuff. I know there's an abundance of all that coming. But I think if it happened overnight and happened really quickly, I probably wouldn't be ready for it, if that makes sense. So as I sit here in this chair now, I'm like, I am so ready for what's coming. And I'm prepared. And people might look at me now and say that's arrogant. Like, I don't think they will actually. I just think I've seen so many people do what I've done that it brings me great inspiration whenever I see someone do it. To the point where, like, I've connected with so many people online that are on the path that I'm on, trying to figure it out. Something I've learned this year as well is that, like, no one really cares. Like, and I say that from experience because sometimes I sat in my chair and I'm like, people just don't understand how hard this is. Like, there was a time 3 months ago where, not 3 months ago, probably a month ago, month and a half, where I was like shaking because I was so tired. But I couldn't stop. And there's a part of me that goes, well, people should care. Why don't people care about this? What? Maybe I'll put a story out. Maybe I'll do a video. And I'm like, people like to see it, but I'm not sure no one is thinking about me right now as I sit here at 10:30 p.m., an hour and a half before 2026. No one is thinking about me right now. Everyone is so caught up in their own individual lives that it is so incredibly hard for them to take into consideration how I'm feeling. And yes, I can put all the content out in the world. Yes, I can sit here and say, I'm struggling, I'm going through this, I'm going through that. But no one really, really cares. And that's why I seek inspiration from people that have gone out on a whim to do what they've done. Like, people probably see what I have now and they're like, you must be so happy with all of this and it must feel amazing to have what you have. And I'm like, I don't feel any different. I'm just a normal person that has backed themselves into a corner with no other way out. And if there's a message that I'm going to give today, it's that anything you set your mind to is possible. I'm an example of that. I'm not incredibly gifted in any one thing. If you look at the first video I ever did on social media, it absolutely sucked. Like, I cringe looking back on that stuff. And I think that's important. I hope that I look back on this conversation one day and cringe because then I'll know I've grown. It's just part of the process. So Chasey's mum, I don't actually know who you are. there are people out there that back themselves, like I said, into a corner and have achieved their dreams, and it's taken them time and they've figured out what works. It's funny, like you look at people now that are like got millions of subscribers, and what I said before about like Stephen Bartlett, like I can't see a world in which he was ever a bad interviewer. And I'm not saying he was a bad interviewer. I think he's an exceptional interviewer, but I go back to the conversations that he's had in 2017 and I'm like, I don't really see too much similarity between some of the conversations that he had when he started out compared to some of the stuff that I had when I started out. And I'm not saying I'm going to be like Stephen Bartlett. In fact, that would be nice. I would want that. I genuinely feel like the path that I'm on, there is like some big thing coming for me. Just with what I'm doing with the podcast and all this sort of stuff. But going back on people like him and just understanding that they were at a sort of a similar point and sort of dealing with some of the stuff that I'm dealing with from a headspace makes the path that much more certain. And that's sort of a question before. I think sort of taking the world that we're in right now is like you can absorb, you can learn from so many people that have been on a similar path to you. Like right now after this podcast, I could listen to a conversation with Mr. Beast, biggest creator in the world. I could listen to a conversation with Max the Meat Guy. I could listen to a conversation with Andy Cooks, who's a big inspiration of mine. I could listen to Google Foods, all these type of people, Nick Giovanni, who I will one day collab with. So if I said you there's only 5 or 6 people, I maybe show you one day. But yeah, they inspire me. Those type of people, the people that have started out with nothing. I saw a quote the other day. It's like, just remember your favorite creator started with 0. And it just brought me back in. Like, I'm no different to anyone that has millions of subscribers. And that is what I want. And that is when I feel like I will be at my absolute best. I'm not at my best now because I'm balancing so much and I'm dealing with way too many things and I'm editing and I'm doing all this sort of stuff. But it's sort of hard for me to be my true self whenever I do these shoots and all this sort of stuff, just because I'm balancing so much. Like I feel like if I had a videographer there and all this sort of stuff, but this will come with time. And this is what I meant before about like the path that I'm on, and I feel like something big is coming. Like I feel like I'm going to have like a production company one day. Honestly, like with what I'm doing, with the passion that I have, I just feel like there's genuinely no other way. Egan Brooks, what is your dream average Tuesday? I've long had a dream to be able to do whatever I want in the world and meet with whoever I want and have access to people that I never thought possible. And it's funny, when I get exposed to people that I never thought would be possible, it seems as though like each time I find, like as the longer I go on, the more I feel like I sort of like, I had a conversation the other day, a podcast with Oscar Ledlin, who's become a friend, but at the time that we sort of connected, like I wouldn't have ever really felt comfortable being in the same room as him, but I felt comfortable with him. And the more I've done all of this, the more I felt comfortable around people that, let's just say, are in a bigger or more advanced position than I am. And I think my dream average Tuesday would be running a team, having everyone with a clear, set, precise mission on what needs to be achieved to take what I want to do globally. I think I will be very discontent with my life if it doesn't get to that point. And I know it will, but at the same time, I want to have a team that on an average Tuesday is working towards a goal to make my platform as big as humanly possible. Whether that be in Argentina, America, like I'm planning a trip to America mid-next year. My dream Tuesday is to be able to connect with someone in Florida, Miami, that's the same place, Texas, England, fly there at the moment's notice, bring a team, and to maybe feel proud of myself. That's sort of separate. That should be most Tuesdays. But I sort of want to be able to get to the point where I'm comfortable with who I am. And not questioning myself so much. And there's a fair bit of work that needs to be done to get to that point. Like, it is so entrenched within me that I think it's going to be hard to overcome. But Average Tuesday, that's what Average Tuesdays are for, hey? That was probably way, way more deep than what Egan probably wanted from that question. A few other questions here and there. If you could share a meal with anybody, who would it be? I don't even know. Probably my great-grandfather. Would love to meet him. God, it's been an hour and 13 minutes. You know what? I think it might be time for the bonus question. Nicole Scarpino. So before I started this conversation, I asked one of my friends, I'm not going to answer some of the stupid questions because I don't think, like, are you single? How big is your banana? Do you eat any greens with your steak? No, I don't really. When are you going to open a small restaurant? Never. When's the last time you ate a vegetable? It was a while ago. Actually, no, I ate sauerkraut. But no, that's about it. What typical meals when you get up in the morning to bedtime? Like, I don't eat too much. Burgers, steak. That's about it. Like, there's not too much more. So, yeah, I started this conversation and I wanted to have a bit of a bonus question that I didn't have the chance to see before. This has just been like a conversation where I'm just going with the flow. I don't know what I'm saying. I'm just going to look back on this and just say, okay, this is interesting. And I'm definitely waffling now, but I'm enjoying it. If you could give yourself one piece of advice basically Nicole, I texted her before this and said, can you give me a bonus question that I can read out? And it was, if you give yourself one piece of advice yourself when you're at your lowest point mentally, what would you tell him? It's a good question. I sort of have been touching on this a few times. I think my advice to him, I would say my lowest point mentally was probably at the start of this year. I can't remember where I've been in such a bad spot. My advice would be, what you are going through right now is making you into the person that you need to be. Or I don't even know. What you are going through right now is going to make it so much easier for you to deal with the challenges that come your way in the future. I think when people go through hard times, when people go through trauma, it'd probably be hard to see a way out. And it's easy for me to say that things come to an end, but it's the most simple answer that I have to that question. All of this is going to come to an end, and you will be better for it at the end. And I could go on for too long about some of the hard things that I've gone through in my life and the positives that have come from that. Like, me going through the starvation with boxing has got me to where I'm sitting right now. Me going through, the stuff when I was younger growing up, like, would it have developed me into the person that I am now, which is someone that sort of struggles to switch off and has an unrelenting focus to achieve like really big dreams? I'm not sure. Like, I don't think it would. So yeah, if I could give myself one bit of advice, it's that good things are coming your way. Good things are coming your way. Go through what you need to go through now. You'll be able to overcome things in the future. It's like what I spoke about earlier. What I went through earlier in the year has made it so much easier right now for me to deal with the quote unquote uncertainty of what's coming. If I hadn't pushed myself to my limit, would I have found or would I have developed that comfortableness? Probably not. But because I went through that, because I pushed myself, I eventually got there in the end. And it has given me so much clarity about what I need to do to get to where I need to go, or to get to where I want to go. So yeah, Nicole, thanks for that question. That was a good one. Like I said, there are a few other questions that I feel like I could touch on, but I think it's been long enough. I thought it'd be good to read out and I know I talked about before about followers and all that sort of stuff, but I thought this would be good, and at this point, whether anyone's even listening, I'm not sure, but this is just for me to look back on. I thought it would be good, given that this is the first solo podcast that I've done, to read out where I'm at this point from a follower perspective. And I know that followers aren't the best way to quantify growth, but it might be good for me to look back on. So as of the 31st of December 2025, I have 16,665 subscribers, 39,000 followers on Facebook, and 47,500 followers on Instagram. And I hope potentially anyone listening to this in the future that those numbers are bigger. But I'm not fussed if they aren't, honestly. But I know they will be. And yeah, I just hope that this year I can continue to grow. This year I can set out to achieve my mission to go global and spread the message, let's just say, even further than I already have. And I feel like I'm taking the steps necessary to get there, but perhaps I want to enjoy the process a bit more. I would say I'm enjoying the process, but like there have been times where I haven't really enjoyed what I'm doing as much. But now I'm like so focused on what I need to do. I just love what I do, and I'm very grateful. And I believe that this is my life's purpose. It is my life's purpose to set out and do what I want to do with content. And yeah, I'm definitely waffling now. For anyone that has listened to any podcasts that I've done in the past, I like to end with a bit of like an inspirational quote from a guest or something meaningful that they can look back on and smile about. And as I was preparing for this, I wouldn't even say I prepared too much, honestly. As I was preparing for this, I wrote out the questions yesterday and I was like, there's something missing. So I got thinking and I was like, maybe I can give myself a crazy ending, because I've just never had the chance to give myself a crazy ending. And as I sit here now, it is 10:45 p.m., an hour and 15 minutes before the new year. And I was like, if I'm going to do this, I might want to give myself a message to myself. So something I've been doing and something I highly recommend doing, it's rather therapeutic, is writing. I don't really write on paper, but I do write on just like my computer and like get all my thoughts out. And it's probably why I'm at the point now where I've been waffling for an hour and 20 minutes, because there's a lot on my mind. This has been fun, honestly. And I thank anyone who is actually listening at this point. But yeah, I wrote a letter to myself and I thought it'd be a good way to wind up the conversation and move on to episode 92, which might not even be out by the time I release this, but that's okay. I'm waffling. So So yeah, this is a letter I wrote to myself about myself in 2025. And it sort of summarizes, I guess, a bit about this whole year and where I'm going and all that sort of stuff, and the version of myself that I know I'm going to be in 2026, which is interesting because I don't really feel like I'm going to wake up and be like a different person, but I really feel like this is going to be the biggest year of my life. And this letter sort of summarizes that. Dear me in 2025, what a year it has been for you. You're really living the dream, aren't you? I mean, look at you, mate. Who would have thought your life would have turned out the way it has? Just over 6 months ago, you were a shell of your current self and unsure about whether what you had been pursuing as a side hustle would work out. You have gone through so much since that day. Early mornings, too many late nights, and enough inner reflection to drive most people insane, to name a few. There are times you have questioned the path you are on. Wonder why things weren't clicking the way you had planned. Days where you were genuinely shaking from pushing yourself to the limits. But all this has just made you more resilient and worthy of what is coming your way. Not all that long ago, you accepted that everything is working out just the way it's meant to, and there is nothing you can do about it. And that's a powerful place to be. I mean, when have you ever just trusted the process? You are nowhere near where you want to be, but you are well and truly on the path. Moving forward, building momentum, becoming someone that you actually respect. Only yesterday you look back on a video that was filmed not all that long ago and cringed. The growth is genuinely hard to put into words, but you don't even realize it the growth is genuinely hard to put into words, but you didn't even realize it whilst you were going through it. You've grown up constantly wanting to prove others wrong. Constantly questioning whether you were enough and wondering what else was out there. You have found your purpose. Harness that and move forward with relentless focus and discipline like you always have. There is nothing you can say to convince me that you are the smartest person in the room. I'm going to say that again. There is nothing you convince me to say that you are the smartest person in the room. Might have to say it again. There is nothing you can say to convince me that you are the smartest in the room. But you will never stop, and for that I'm proud. So as the end of the year draws closer, all I can say is this. Dear me in 2026, this is the year that will define you. This is the year that you will grow more than you ever have. The year that you will hopefully push yourself beyond what you previously thought was possible. The year that you think bigger than you ever have before. The year that you will undoubtedly remember the most for the rest of your life. It's going to be hard, but don't forget why you started this. Despite this, you know what you are chasing is coming, and you always have, haven't you? Be ready, but don't be surprised when you get there. This, my friend, is the year that will change your life forever. I hope you're ready. That, my friends, was an experience. Thank you for listening. That was episode 91 of the Stay Clad Experience. I don't know what I said. This is going to be an interesting listen to look back on, but thank you. And thank you if you're listening right now, because probably people like you that understand me a bit more now. And for that, I'm grateful. Buckle up. Wow. That was wild. That was cool. That was so cool. I think I need to do that more often.